Hello, America, and any others. Um, I want to start today with a little bit of wisdom that I learned over the years um, about the difference between a fairy tale and a Navy story. And I'm going to add to that a Democrat story. You see, a fairy tale begins once upon a time. A Navy story begins, now this is no bullshit. And a Democrat story begins, this is a fact. And that becomes important in just a little bit. I'd like to start with the Wayne County Board of Canvassers and a discussion that they had in a Zoom meeting, which was public. And I want to basically show for us here the just stellar integrity of the individuals that that work on that particular board. This guy here is a charmer. His name is Ned Stabler. Ned Stabler, that's Staebler. I want you to remember that name, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But let's hear what Ned has to say to his constituents.
We also know that the Secretary of State and the Attorney General have already tweeted out that your legal arguments are rubbish and you're going to lose when it comes to court. So we're not worried about that at all. I'm also not worried about any of your, things are bad so we can't certify arguments, because that's just ridiculous. You certified in August when they were worse. Less than 50% of the ballots were recountable. Now over 72% are. 58% of them were even balanced when it was less than 30% last time. So
am I hearing that correctly? He's complaining that they are not going to certify an election that has even more errors than a previously certified election. That's what I heard.
Doubled. It's gotten way better because the Secretary of State actually jumped in and did her job, unlike you.
Modifying the rules of the election and the counting rules was doing her job, except as I recall, it's the state legislature that has to do that job, not the individual who did that job, the Secretary of State. It's like, oh, okay. But that's okay. You don't have to, you don't have to know the facts when you're a Democrat. You just have to have a big mouth.
But I know it's not going to change your opinion. You talked about not certifying Detroit, even though you acknowledged that Livonia, a city, by the way, I know you know is 95% white, had bigger variances than Detroit, which is 80% black. We understand, and you've now added your name. So
I wonder if Livonia got a 4 a.m. dump of hundreds of thousands of ballots. Do you think that had anything to do with it? I'm just asking.
I'm not going to try to change your mind. I just want to let you know that the Trump stink, the stain of racism that you, William Hartman, and Monica Palmer have just covered yourself in, is going to follow you throughout history. Your grandchildren are going to think of you like Bull Connor or George Wallace. Monica Palmer and William Hartman will forever be known in southeastern Michigan as two racists who did something so unprecedented that...
Wow. How terrible for their children and their grandchildren that their mother, their grandmother, their great-grandmother, if it goes on that long, had the temerity to stand up to a fascist piece of shit. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Ned Stabler, fascist piece of shit. That's Nedstaebler, Ned Stabler, piece of shit. Fascist shit. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear any more from him. He's a dick. I really do want to hear from this guy, though. I like this guy. This is a charming piece of work. Let's get to know Abraham Ayash, shall we? Oh, yes.
One quick point. So I was on the ballot, and I'm the state rep-elect for House District 4, and we have been without a state representative since March 29th because my friend and state representative passed away from COVID-19.
In a motorcycle accident, falling off a cliff, while infected with, I don't know, Ebola. But it was a COVID death. No doubt, it had to be a COVID death. All right, maybe it was, but fuck, who knows these days.
Now, your refusal to certify the election today, despite me not having any challenger on the ballot for the partial term, despite having no one filed to run as a write-in, will continue to deny the people of House District 4 of Hamtramck and Detroit, that is majority black, to have a voice in the state legislature. Now, Ms. Palmer, you mentioned how you want to change that the laws have to be changed by the legislature. I can tell you this much. Let me go to Lansing and we'll get to work. Now,
make sure that I get elected and I have power. And we'll go to work on that. But make sure I get elected. Yeah, okay.
Let me be also very clear about this. The party that you are a part of had complete control over our state government for 8 years, and they did not do a single thing. So while you may show us your caucasity today in refusing...
Is that actually a word? I mean, outside of being on the lips of racist pieces of shit, does that word actually have any meaning? I mean, seriously, is it in Merriam-Webster? I'm sure it is now. Before, the last 4 years, was it in the dictionary? I don't know. I had never heard the word before. Perhaps it's my caucasus privilege.
To certify the election and making note that you are okay with certifying all of Wayne County except Detroit. Know that we see what's happening. Know that there is nothing other than Jim Crowing that is going on right now.
Jim Crowing. Sounds kind of interesting coming out of the mouth of a Democrat, considering that it was the Southern Democrats who wrote and enforced the Jim Crow laws, both legally and, of course, with the Klan, another Democrat institution. But here, let's let our little Arab monkey speak.
And recognize the facts. The Republican Party's major candidate has sued over 25 times across the country, and he failed.
Okay, so let's face the facts. The Trump election committee and the legal team assigned to it have filed 4 lawsuits and actually retracted the one that was active in this very jurisdiction because they brought it in order to forestall certification. And at the moment, that's no longer an issue. So there are now only 3 lawsuits. The other multifold lawsuits that have been started by other citizens for other reasons. And the fact is that, yes, they have predominantly failed. I haven't heard of any of them that have not failed. And I believe the number was like 21. But apparently, according to this factual individual, he's very, very up on the facts, except he's not. So maybe it is 30. But the reason that they have failed is because none of the parties that brought the suits had legal standing to do so. It's not because there was no proof. It's not because the arguments didn't have merit. It's because the people that brought the suits did not have the standing to do so. Let's see what other facts our friend has.
Know the facts. You, as the Board of Canvassers, do not decide who is to be elected.
Wow, that is a fact. They don't decide. All they do is certify the election, which is part of deciding who gets elected. So that's only partially a fact.
The voters do. Know the facts. You are standing here today telling folks that Black Detroit should not have their votes counted.
Is that the fact? Or is it that if you are not certifying an election because there are improprieties and there are red flags across the board, more than would be a statistic norm, that perhaps there has been, I believe I read the word fuckery about, and therefore will be invalidating legal votes belonging to black people, as well as everybody else that voted, by putting garbage into the system and saying, you know what, we know you're a minority, we know that you have the right to vote, but we're going to go ahead and piss all over your right to vote because we can do it and we can cheat. And of course, we'll have somebody, perhaps a man with, I don't know, a Middle Eastern caste, freshly minted into the democratic process, to stand up and say, yes, it's okay. They can piss on your rights because I am now elected to the 4th house for the state. I think that's what I heard.
And know the facts. You are certainly showing that you are a racist.
Why is it that only the people who are themselves racist seem to want to cast the racist word upon others so freely?
You may say that you are not. You may claim that you are not.
You know, piece of advice. Somebody calls you a racist, smile at them and ignore them and walk away. Because if you say you're not a racist, well, it just incenses them. It's like, well, that's just the guilty mind talking. Of course you're a racist. Or you can call this guy a sand nigger, which is racist. But, you know, it'll give you a small amount of satisfaction.
But let's be very clear. Your words today and your actions today made it clear that you are okay with silencing the votes of an 80% African-American city.
Or perhaps you're just okay with silencing the illegal votes, you know, of this African-American city.
And what that tells us is you, Miss Monica Palmer from Grosse Pointe Woods.
I'm sorry, where did she live?
Which has a history of racism.
Is that one of his facts?
Are deciding to enable and continue to perpetuate the racist history of this country.
The racist history of this country that has worked for generations, for over 100 years, to get rid of slavery, to improve our race relationships, to make sure that everybody starts off equally, that nobody is discriminated against. It's not a bad history. I kind of like that.
And I want you to think about what that means for your kids who probably go to Grosse Pointe North.
I'm sorry, where do her kids go to school? I'm writing this down so that I can send them flowers. I'm done with this dickhead, okay? He goes on with more bullshit. What's kind of interesting, and I'm not going to show it, is that at the end of this particular video, whoever this is done by, this Brinium, doxes him and his Muslim sister. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to show that. I find it funny and very appropriate, but I'm not going to do that. So the problem I have with all of this is that the Democrats, and basically, I'll get to what I think about Democrats in a moment, but they tend to have this tactic of making a statement as if it wins an argument that they're refusing to actually fight and have an argument about. And that's what this guy has been doing. Fact. This is no bullshit. It's a Navy story, right? Except it's a fact. So that's a Democrat tale. Keep that in mind. So if you live in the 4th district, in the state of Michigan, for the love of God, somebody run against this piece of shit. Do not give this creature power. Look at what he's doing now when he's effectively just bought and paid for by somebody with, more money than he has sense. Don't put this thing into power. Do not give Abraham Ayash political power. Make absolutely sure he does not attain office. You can already tell what kind of individual he is when he threatens and doxes a woman and her children publicly. It's criminal. And as a matter of fact, it is criminal. So either vote this guy out, recall him, or if you have legal standing, remember that little thing about legal standing? File criminal charges against him, because what he did is illegal. It is not legal to speak publicly personal information about anybody, let alone your political opponent. This guy is trash on the highest order. And he's a Democrat. And the problem that I have with Democrats is quite simple. They're the new fascists. They're communists. That's what they are. That's what they have been demonstrating ever since they started running for office this time round. Take a look at what they're talking about doing to our country. They are communists. And they are fascists in the way that they operate. Do as we say, or we will hurt you. I've posted a video on the Democratic Party as being the domestic enemy. But when you hear members of the Senate and Congress threatening members of Congress, threatening members of the Supreme Court of the United States, threatening the people of the United States from the Senate floor, they're fascists. They are the new brown shirts. They must be defeated utterly. They're not to be trusted. Don't give them power. So most of us just want to be left alone. It's like, you know what? Just, go about your business. F you. I don't want to hear your crap. And it would be okay. Except it's not okay. Because you're not going to be left in peace. And I'd like to play a quick piece from Ronald Reagan.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender.
Do not surrender, America. Do not surrender our nation. Do not surrender your liberty.